I never expected that a simple job at an Amazon warehouse would lead me into something so terrifying that even now as I write this, I can't sleep without every light on. People say warehouses are just big empty spaces full of boxes, but this one, it's different. It breathes, it watches, and worst of all, it remembers. It all started a few weeks ago. I had been struggling to make ends meet, jumping between temp jobs and late night gigs. Rent was overdue, and my fridge was a barren wasteland. So when I saw the job listing for an overnight position at the Amazon Fulfillment Center just on the outskirts of town, I jumped at the opportunity. The pay was decent, and the hours were perfect for someone like me who had nothing better to do from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. The facility was massive. They called it Facility A17, and it looked like a city block-sized metal box dropped in the middle of nowhere. Surrounded by thick pine forest and endless silence, the warehouse seemed oddly isolated. No neighboring buildings, no traffic, just trees and shadows. On my first night, I arrived 30 minutes early. The security gate buzzed open slowly after a long pause, and the guard barely looked at me when I walked in. He handed me a badge with my name and ID, then pointed down the hall toward a frosted glass door labeled Operations Floor 3. There were no smiles, no warm welcomes. Inside the break room, a few other night shift workers sat quietly sipping coffee or staring at their phones. No one really spoke. I sat next to a girl with bright green hair and tried to strike up a conversation. "First night?" she asked flatly. "Yeah? You?" "Fourth? Still alive." She said it like a joke, but her eyes didn't match the tone. Before I could ask more, a man in a dark uniform walked in and clapped his hands to get our attention. "All right, listen up," he said. "We're short-staffed tonight. Standard protocol applies. Stick to your lanes, follow the light paths, and for the love of God, don't break the rules." He handed out a paper, an actual printed paper in an era where everything was digital. The heading read, Facility A17, Night Shift Rules. 1. Never stray from your assigned sector. 2. If the floor lights turn red, freeze and don't move until they return to white. 3. If you hear whistling, do not acknowledge it. 4. Do not engage with any coworker not wearing a visible ID badge. 5. The elevators must not be used between 3:13 a.m. and 3:33 a.m. under any circumstances. 6. If a package is marked X77, place it in bin 0 and walk away immediately. 7. Don't look at camera 6. I laughed a little when I read them. I thought it was some kind of initiation prank, but no one else was laughing. In fact, they all folded their sheets up and tucked them away like it was gospel. My job was simple enough. Scan packages, sort them into bins, and send them down the belt. I was assigned Sector C, a long corridor lined with black shelving units and robot carts that whirred quietly past. I wore a scanner on my wrist and kept my ID badge clipped to my vest like instructed. For the first couple of hours, everything seemed normal, boring even. The lights above me glowed a soft white, and the robotic arms swung rhythmically like a mechanical ballet. At 12:15 a.m., I took my first break and sat alone in the break room, eating chips from the vending machine. That's when I met Owen. He was older, probably in his late 40s, with deep eye bags and skin that looked like parchment. He slid into the seat across from me and stared for a few seconds before speaking. "You've read the rules, right?" I nodded. "Take them seriously, especially the whistling." I smiled, thinking he was just trying to freak me out. "I'm serious," he said. "They tell us it's for safety, but it's not. It's for containment." I waited for him to continue, but he stood up without another word and walked out of the room. I returned to my sector and things continued as usual until 2:03 a.m. That's when the lights turned red. Not gradually, just snap, white to blood red. I froze, confused. Then I remembered Rule 2. Don't move. I stood perfectly still. The scanner in my hand dimmed, the shelf stopped humming. Even the air felt heavier. It lasted maybe 30 seconds, but it felt like an eternity. In that frozen moment, I heard something from the far end of the corridor, a soft scratching, then footsteps, then a faint whistle, tuneless, drawn out, and echoing. Something moved between the shelves. I didn't turn to look. My muscles were locked, not from the rule, but from instinct. I knew that whatever it wasn't supposed to be here. As quickly as it started, the lights turned back to white. The scanner on my wrist chirped. The shelf lights blinked on. and the footsteps vanished. I wanted to report it. I wanted to ask someone, anyone, what the hell that was. But when I looked around, I realized I was alone. Totally and utterly alone. I finished my shift in silence and practically ran to my car as soon as the clock hit 6 a.m. The sun was rising, but I couldn't shake the sense that something was still watching me. Over the next few nights, things only got worse. Camera 6 kept glitching on the security feed in the break room, showing static and shadows that didn't make sense. Packages marked X77 started showing up more frequently, and one night, I swear one of them was breathing. The lights turned red more than once, and I began to dread the sound of whistling in the silence. And then there was the elevator. Owen stopped showing up after my fourth shift. I asked around, but nobody knew or claimed not to. On the fifth night, I saw the elevator doors open at exactly 3:14 a.m. Someone stepped out, but their ID badge was blank. They looked like Owen, but not quite. His skin was too pale, his smile too wide. He stared at me for a full minute before walking off into the restricted storage area. No one else seemed to see him. I wanted to quit. I wanted to run and never look back. But something about that warehouse, it wanted me to stay. And I think it's only just begun. I returned on the sixth night against every instinct screaming inside me. I don't even know why. Maybe it was the paycheck. Maybe it was the way the warehouse seemed to sink its hooks into you. Once you start working there, it feels like you have to go back. The facility looked the same as always, giant, cold, and dead silent from the outside. But as I swiped my badge and walked through the security gate, a shiver ran down my spine. Something was different. The air smelled faintly of burning plastic, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me from the tree line. The security guard didn't say a word as he waved me through. I passed by the main hallway and peeked at the staff board. Owen's name had been scrubbed off the schedule. No explanation. No note. Nothing. Where's Owen? I asked one of the other workers, a heavy-set guy with a thick beard named Malik. He looked at me like I had just said something offensive. Don't talk about people who disappear, he muttered. They hate that. They? He didn't answer. He just walked away. That night, I was reassigned to Sector D. Sector D was different from C. It was colder, bigger. The ceiling was so high it disappeared into darkness, and the shelves were even taller. Everything echoed strangely. The robots didn't make their usual soft hums here. They clicked and clattered like insects. And the overhead lights flickered more often. I reviewed the rules again before my shift began. I kept that crumpled paper folded in my back pocket now, like a lucky charm. Rule number 1, never stray from your assigned sector. But of course, that night I did. It wasn't intentional. A package had been incorrectly routed into my area. It didn't have a barcode, just a bright red sticker that read Return to Sector E. I tried to flag it in the scanner, but the device glitched and rebooted. I didn't want to risk getting written up, so I figured I'd just quickly drop it off and return. It was only a few steps outside my zone. As I pushed through the double doors into Sector E, the air changed immediately. It was quiet. Not silent, quiet in that unnatural, suffocating way. Like sound itself had been sucked out of the air. My footsteps felt like they echoed endlessly, and the shelves were arranged in strange asymmetrical rows. The lights here weren't white, they were dim yellow, flickering like candles. I placed the box in the nearest bin marked E, turned to leave, and saw someone at the end of the aisle. They were crouched low, their head tilted at a painful angle. I couldn't see their face, but they were twitching slightly, shaking. I took a step back. My scanner vibrated suddenly. I looked down. No signal. When I looked up again, the crouched figure was gone. I rushed back to Sector D, heart pounding. I reminded myself of the rule I had just broken. My palms were sweaty. I couldn't focus. Every little creak or robotic chirp startled me. Then the floor lights turned red. Everything stopped. I froze instantly, chest tight, eyes darting around for movement. 30 seconds passed, then 60. Whistling started, low, sad, and meandering. It didn't sound like it came from a person. It sounded like it came from the walls. From the far end of the sector, something stepped into view. It looked like a worker, same yellow vest, same badge position, but their arms were too long. Their shoulders scraped the edge of the shelving units, and they moved like they didn't understand how joints were supposed to work. They walked past my aisle slowly, head turning like they were sniffing the air. I held my breath. Then I heard it, a whisper, not from the creature, from the shelves. Don't look, don't move, don't breathe. It was quiet but clear. A woman's voice. Not in my head. I swear it was real. The thing paused, its head cocked toward my aisle. I clenched my fists. My knees shook. Then it kept walking. The lights turned white again. Just like that. The shelf beside me whispered again. Sector E is wrong. Don't go again. I stepped back, staring at the shelves. I looked behind them. Nothing. Just metal racks and dusty boxes. But something, someone, was watching. Protecting? I couldn't think. I couldn't speak. I just ran back to the break room. Inside, Malik was sitting with his head in his hands. You left your sector, he said without looking up. I nodded slowly. He stood and grabbed me by the arm. Come with me, now. He led me through a back hallway I'd never noticed before. There was a service room with a low ceiling and an old CRT monitor on a metal cart. No lights, just the hum of the machine. He flipped on the monitor. Camera 6, he said. I flinched. Rule number 7, don't look at camera 6. Malik stared me down. You need to see it, or you'll never survive. The screen crackled, static filling the room. Then it cleared. A view of the warehouse appeared, dimly lit and grainy, but something was wrong. The camera was showing my sector, but not how it looked now. It was older, rusty, covered in cobwebs, and there were figures, dozens of them, shuffling between the shelves, faceless, jerky-limbed, whistling softly as they moved. In the center of the frame was Owen. He stood motionless, eyes black, mouth wide open like he was screaming silently. Then the figures turned toward the camera, all of them, as if they saw me. The screen went black. You saw them, didn't you? Malik whispered. I nodded slowly. They're not glitches. They're not ghosts. They're old workers, the ones who broke the rules. The warehouse keeps them. What do they want? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Malik looked at me with tired eyes. They want us to join them. He turned away, and I sat there in stunned silence. Somewhere deep in the warehouse, I could hear whistling again. I didn't sleep after that shift. I just sat in my apartment with every light on, listening to the night outside as if something might have followed me home. I kept thinking about Owen's face on that screen, frozen, screaming, lifeless. Was he dead? Or worse, still trapped in that hell, reliving the same nightmare over and over? The rules weren't just guidelines. They were survival instructions. The warehouse didn't just run on machines. It fed on something darker. Still, I went back. It's hard to explain why. Maybe it was fear. Maybe the warehouse had already sunk its claws in and wasn't letting go. I just knew I couldn't stop thinking about it. About what I saw. About what wasn't supposed to exist. On the 7th night, I arrived to find a new slip attached to my locker. Open quote, special assignment. Package reclassification. Return all X77 items to bin 0. Do not open under any circumstances. Do not delay. XX77. I remembered that label. The rule about it was clear. Rule number 6. If a package is marked X77, place it in bin 0 and walk away immediately. I asked Malik about it before the shift began. He shook his head. They've started giving that job to new people now, he said quietly. They used to have a whole department for it. None of them ever made it past 2 weeks. What's in the packages? He looked me dead in the eye. Things that don't belong anywhere. Not in this world. Not even in time. That shift, my scanner was reprogrammed. It only beeped when it found packages labeled X77. Most were small shoebox sized, sealed in thick black plastic. The scanner instructed me each time, bin 0, east corridor. Bin 0 wasn't like the other bins. It wasn't on the main floor. I had to go down a grated metal staircase at the end of the eastern sector, one I had never noticed before. There were no signs, just a motion-triggered red light above it. The air was heavier there, like it hadn't moved in decades. The stairs creaked under my boots as I descended into the underbelly of Facility A17. The lower level was different. No automation, no robots, just rows of decaying shelves and flickering red lights. Dust floated in thick clouds, and every sound echoed for miles. The place smelled like mildew and something metallic, like old blood. I followed the scanner signal until I reached it. Bin 0. It wasn't a bin. It was a steel hatch bolted to the floor. The word 0 was spray painted across it in a sickly orange color. No latch, no hinge, just a round metal hole at the top, big enough to drop a box into. When I dropped the first package in, I expected it to hit the bottom quickly. Instead, I heard it fall, and fall, and keep falling, for at least 20 seconds, then silence. That's when I heard the scratching, soft, from underneath the hatch, then a thump. I stepped back. I dropped the second box in and turned to leave, but something whispered my name. Not a voice I recognized, just a dry, crackling whisper. I didn't wait to see what came next. I bolted back up the stairs, heart hammering in my chest. But when I got to the top, I realized something horrifying. The warehouse wasn't the same anymore. The shelves had shifted. The aisles no longer led where they were supposed to. I should have exited into Sector D, but I was somewhere else entirely. Somewhere wrong. The air was freezing, and the walls were coated in something like frost. My breath puffed out in small clouds. The lights were dim blue now, and the usual warehouse hum was gone, replaced by a low, pulsating tone that seemed to come from the walls. My scanner buzzed. A message appeared on its tiny screen. Open quote, unauthorized access detected. Return to sector immediately. Do not look behind you. I stood there frozen. I hadn't even thought about turning around until it told me not to. Then I heard it. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, wet. I couldn't stop myself. I had to look. What I saw wasn't human. It wore a uniform like mine, but its limbs were too long and its head was bent backward, mouth open wide with rows of impossibly sharp teeth. Its eyes were on the sides of its head. It took a step forward and smiled. I ran. I don't even remember how I got back to the break room. I think the aisles just opened for me. Maybe the shelves were helping me again. Maybe something deeper didn't want me dead yet. When I burst through the door, Malik stood up, wide-eyed. You went to bin 0, didn't you? I nodded, gasping. What followed you? I don't know. I choked out. It said my name. He slammed the break room door shut and bolted it. Then you're marked, he said. I backed away. Marked? They don't whisper unless they want you. You've been seen. They know you now. Who are they? He leaned in and whispered. You ever wonder why this warehouse is in the middle of nowhere? Why it has its own grid? Why we get paid more than any other fulfillment center in the country? I didn't answer. Because we're not just fulfilling orders, Jason. We're feeding something. We're keeping it quiet, contained, satisfied. That night, I didn't clock out. I just ran. I drove until sunrise and didn't stop until I reached my apartment. But when I checked my phone that morning, there was a new shift notification. Open quote, you are required to report to facility A17 tonight. Absence will result in termination, close quote. There was no option to decline, no contact button, just a countdown timer. 8 hours and counting, as if the warehouse had already made its decision. I didn't want to go back. Every cell in my body screamed at me to run, to disappear, to change my name and move across the country. But that timer on my phone kept ticking. It wasn't just a reminder. It felt like a threat. The closer it got to 0, the more I felt that thing I saw near bin 0 watching me from the dark corners of my apartment, whispering, breathing, waiting. So I went back. The warehouse was even quieter than usual that night. No sound at the gate. The guard wasn't there, just a folded piece of paper sitting on his desk with my name written in blood-red ink. I picked it up carefully. Open quote, elevator testing initiative, clearance granted. Report to elevator bay 4 at 3:10 a.m. sharp. Remember, rule number 5, close quote. Rule number 5, the elevators must not be used between 3:13 a.m. and 3:33 a.m. under any circumstances. So why was I being told to go there at 3:10? Was it a mistake, a trap? Malik was already in the break room when I arrived, sitting in the corner with a cigarette burning between his fingers. He looked up as I entered and saw the slip in my hand. No, he whispered, not the elevator. They gave me clearance, I said quietly. That's not clearance, Jason. That's a test. Or worse, a sacrifice. You know what happens in those elevators, don't you? He nodded slowly. They don't just go up and down. Sometimes they go somewhere else. Where? He shook his head. Depends. Some say the basement levels that were never built. Some say other dimensions. Some say it's where the warehouse buries its mistakes. I almost didn't go. I almost tore the paper and left. But then I heard that soft whistle in the air vents above the break room, followed by a voice whispering my name. They knew I was here. They were waiting. So I went. At exactly 3:08 a.m., I arrived at elevator bay 4. It looked like any ordinary industrial elevator. Metal doors, a flickering floor panel above it, an old button glowing faintly, I waited until 3:10. The doors opened on their own. I stepped inside. There were no buttons inside, just a small touchscreen that flickered once, then lit up with the message. Open quote, welcome, Jason. Descending. Do not speak. Do not touch the walls. Do not open your eyes until told. Close quote. Before I could react, the door slammed shut and the elevator began to descend. Not with the slow mechanical hum I expected, but with free fall speed. I felt my stomach lift into my throat, the air sucked from the room. The lights went out. Pitch black. I closed my eyes tight, my ears popped, and then a voice whispered directly into my ear, though no one else was there. Do you regret coming back? I didn't respond. Another voice, this one much deeper. Do you remember the screams? Something brushed against my face, cold and slick. I clamped my mouth shut and kept my eyes closed. Then the elevator stopped. A chime rang out. Open quote. Open your eyes. Close quote. I did. I was no longer in the warehouse. The doors opened into a dimly lit corridor, brick walls, dripping pipes, the smell of rot and rust thick in the air. There were no shelves, no packages, just a long hallway filled with whispering echoes. I stepped out cautiously. The elevator behind me vanished, literally vanished, like it had never been there. The whispers grew louder, chanting, crying, then suddenly screaming. From the shadows ahead, something came crawling, not walking but dragging itself forward with arms that bent the wrong way. It wore a tattered vest and an old badge covered in black soot. Owen, but not the Owen I remembered. His face was melted on one side. His eyes were blank, as if they had been burned out. He stopped a few feet from me and opened his mouth. No tongue, no sound, just blood dripping from the corners. He raised a finger and pointed behind me. I turned. There was a mirror standing in the middle of the hallway. No wall, just a mirror. In the reflection, I saw myself, but not me. The version in the mirror was older, paler, with a faint black spiral growing slowly around my neck. I turned to run, but the corridor kept extending. Every step forward stretched the hallway further. The lights above flickered faster. The whispering became laughter. Mocking, hollow. Then I saw them. All the co-workers without badges, the ones we were told not to engage with. They stepped out from the walls themselves, phasing through the bricks like smoke, their faces blank, their mouths wide. They surrounded me. I closed my eyes again. Then I heard it, an old mechanical ding. The elevator! I opened my eyes and sprinted toward the sound. The doors were open. I threw myself inside, and just before they closed, one of the faceless workers reached for me. Its fingers brushed my wrist. The lights flickered red. I screamed. And then, silence. The elevator returned me to the main warehouse floor. It was 3:36 a.m. I collapsed in the hallway, shaking. When Malik found me, I was curled up, rocking. He helped me to the break room. I showed him my wrist. A black spiral mark was burned into the skin where the faceless worker touched me. 3 people came back from that elevator before you, he said, voice low. None of them lasted more than a week. They all went hollow. Like their bodies stayed, but something else wore their skin. And the ones who didn't come back? I asked. He stared at me. They never left the elevator at all. That night, I quit. I told myself I'd never go back. I even smashed the scanner they gave me and burned the slip. I blocked the facility's number. But the next morning, there was a new message waiting on my phone. Open quote. Your next shift begins at 10 p.m. Refusal is not allowed. You are marked. You belong to facility A17. Close quote. And underneath the message, a picture of me sleeping in my bed. The photo of me sleeping didn't make sense. I lived alone. My door was locked. The windows were sealed. But there I was, sprawled in bed, mouth slightly open, phone charging beside me, exactly how I remembered falling asleep. The photo had been taken at 4:11 a.m. My stomach turned. I deleted the image, turned my phone off, and threw it in the kitchen sink. But when I turned back around, my shift notification was still glowing on the blank screen. 10 p.m. You are expected. Blackout protocol initiated. That was new. I had never seen those words before. Blackout protocol. I didn't want to go back. I couldn't go back. But just before sunset, the power in my entire apartment complex went out. Lights, phone, Wi-Fi, everything. My backup battery packs drained. My neighbors, all asleep, every last one of them, in their clothes, on their porches, on their couches, like someone had switched off the whole building. It was like the warehouse had reached out and flicked a switch. At 9:30 p.m., a black van pulled up outside. No driver, just an open side door and a glowing white screen inside that read, open quote, please take your seat, Jason. Facility A17 awaits, close quote. I didn't step in voluntarily. I was pulled. By the time I blinked again, I was standing back in the warehouse parking lot, alone. The massive metal doors slid open by themselves, welcoming me into that pulsing steel belly. Inside, the lights were dimmer than usual. The usual white floodlights had turned a dull amber, casting long, crooked shadows across the shelves. The air was heavier, oily. My boots stuck slightly to the floor with each step. There were no workers, no robots, only silence. The break room was pitch black. The vending machines flickered static. On the table, someone had left a new rule sheet, freshly printed and damp, like it had been soaked in sweat. Blackout protocol, emergency rules. 1. Do not speak. 2. Do not shine light into dark shelves. 3. If you hear your own voice calling for help, do not respond. If a package moves on its own, deliver it anyway. 5. You may see a version of yourself. Do not acknowledge it. 6. Bin 0 is now closed. Use disposal chute in Sector X. 7. If lights fail completely, close your eyes and remain still until a voice says, it's safe now. 8. If you survive until sunrise, do not leave through the main entrance. These weren't just rules anymore. They were warnings. A new scanner was waiting for me near the dispatch wall, sleek black, humming with static. It vibrated once and buzzed. Open quote, task, assist moving active inventory to Sector X. Close quote. Active inventory? That was the phrase they used for items that weren't quite items. I was already shaking when I reached the floor. The whole warehouse had changed. The shelves were breathing, slowly, in and out. You could see the metal ripple with each inhale. Packages rustled as if they contained living creatures. One shelf creaked open, and something with fingers too long pushed against the tape from inside a box. I didn't open it. I just scanned it and placed it on the moving track. Then, down the corridor behind me, I heard it. My own voice. Jason, Jason, help me, please, I'm trapped. I can't get out. It was me, exactly me. Same tone, same panic. I froze, staring down the aisle. I couldn't see anything. Then another voice joined it, quieter, like a whisper across water. Don't respond, it's not you. I spun around, now wanted to scream, but the rule said not to speak. So I swallowed the scream and turned back to the scanner. It buzzed again. New package, new instruction. Open quote, active package. Code 6D-777, escort to disposal chute, Sector X, close quote. I found the box in the middle of a shelf. It was bigger than the others. Something inside was moving. Slowly, like shifting weight. As I lifted it, the box hummed. Low, like it was alive. The scanner beeped rapidly as I neared Sector X. Sector X wasn't on any map. It was beneath the loading docks, hidden behind a sliding panel labeled electrical maintenance. Inside was a sloped tunnel, concrete and rust covered, leading to a single steel chute with claw marks around the rim. A message was engraved above it. Open quote, throw nothing that loves you. Close quote. I don't know what that meant. I didn't want to. The box in my hand shifted. Jason, it whispered. I remember your mother's name. I almost dropped it. My thumb brushed the scanner and it beeped again. Disposal confirmed. I threw the box down the chute. It screamed all the way down. I stood there, shaking, staring into the darkness. Then the lights failed. Not a flicker. A total blackout. Everything went black and I dropped to the floor, eyes shut, heart pounding so hard it hurt. Something moved near me. I felt cold air brush my neck. Then I heard it again. My own voice, crying. Why did you throw me away? Footsteps circled me, then stopped. Then a whisper, this time not mine. It's safe now. I opened my eyes. Light returned. White, sterile, blinding. The warehouse looked normal again. Clean, organized. The hum of the robots had returned. The scanner in my hand had reset. Break room. Clock out. Go home. But as I turned to leave, I saw someone walking toward me from the other side of the floor. They wore my vest, my face, me. Same walk, same build. He smiled at me. Then he walked through the shelf without touching it, like a ghost sliding through the world. When I got to the break room, Malik wasn't there. No one was. Just a note on the board. Open quote, Malik. Terminated. Clocked out permanently. Close quote. I looked at my scanner again. There was a new rule notification flashing. Next protocol. Substitution processing. I didn't understand it then, but I do now. I'm not sure I came back alone, and I'm starting to forget if I'm me anymore. I stared at the red button. It pulsed slowly, almost like it was breathing. The final rule echoed in my mind. If the red button appears, don't press it unless you're ready to never leave. For a moment, I stood frozen, my fingers twitching by my side. Sweat ran down my temple despite the chilled air of the warehouse. Around me, everything had gone still. No workers, no clattering carts, not even the soft mechanical hum of conveyor belts. It was as if the warehouse was holding its breath, waiting to see what I'd do. And then the shadows moved. Out from the aisles, from beneath the racks, crawling across the conveyor belts, they emerged. Dozens of them. Dozens of identical versions of me. My face, my clothes, my nervous twitch, all slightly off. One had a crooked neck hanging limp to the side. Another had dark, empty sockets where eyes should be. One version of me grinned so wide, his mouth nearly tore open at the cheeks. They surrounded me slowly, moving in perfect synchrony, eyes locked onto the button behind me. You shouldn't be here, one of them whispered in my voice. You broke the schedule, another one hissed, his jaw clicking. You stayed after the 300 scan, a third one snarled. You don't belong anywhere now. I backed toward the button. Every instinct in my body screamed not to press it. Every part of me remembered the countless warnings. But those things, the copies, were getting closer, their footsteps silent. What happens if I press it? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. The one with the wide mouth tilted its head. You stay, it whispered, but not like you. Not really. The floor beneath me vibrated. A distant roar filled the warehouse, deep and low like metal grinding against stone. The entire building felt like it was shifting. One of the fluorescent lights flickered and burst overhead, showering me in sparks. I had seconds. I slammed my fist down on the red button. There was no explosion, no sirens, no flashing lights, just silence. Then the world cracked open. I wasn't standing on the warehouse floor anymore. I was floating, suspended in a void of blueprints and code, machinery and memories. I saw conveyor belts looping infinitely, packages flying into black holes, workers dissolving into sparks. I saw people being printed like 3D models, emerging from machines screaming, their bodies glitching. I saw myself, thousands of me, stacked like inventory, some sleeping, some screaming, some smiling eerily as they walked into black doors labeled returns. This warehouse wasn't just a facility, it was a machine that processed reality. Items in, rules out, people, recycled. And now I was part of it. A voice, mechanical calm, echoed in my head. Employee 4241, violation, rule number 7, unauthorized red button activation, penalty, permanent reassignment. The void blinked. Suddenly, I was back in the warehouse. Only, it wasn't mine. This one was endless. Aisles stretching beyond sight, drones floating in the air, strange robotic creatures assembling items I didn't recognize. It smelled of static and oil, the walls pulsed with wires that moved like veins. I looked down. My Amazon vest was gone, replaced with a sleek metallic uniform. On my wrist was a glowing band. I tried to remove it, but it burned my fingers. A package materialized in front of me. My scanner lit up. Item, employee orientation kit, no 00. Destination, aisle 999B, door 0. I looked around. The aisles had no numbers. The scanners blinked again. Late delivery will result in reprogramming. I swallowed hard. Somewhere in this place, I knew others were watching. Maybe even versions of me. Or worse. I picked up the package and started walking. Time had no meaning here. I passed endless shelves holding impossible objects, a can labeled Laughs of a Child, a box containing 1984 Christmas Eve, a glowing jar tagged Memory of First Love. Was Amazon selling moments now? Experiences? Voices whispered from the racks. Don't be late. Don't be late. Door 0 opens only once. At the end of the aisle, I found it. Door 0. It was black and featureless. No handle, no lock, just a square slab of nothingness. I held the package up. The door shimmered, then slowly began to dissolve into mist. Inside was another warehouse, but this one was different. The colors were wrong. The gravity felt off. Everything moved too slowly, like I was stuck in a dream underwater. I stepped inside. Rows of workers stood silently, scanning empty air. Conveyor belts carried invisible packages. Supervisors floated, their faces blurry, giving orders in a static-filled language. A new scanner beeped on my wrist. Begin scan cycle. Eternity loop 1. Items to scan. I screamed. No sound came out, and yet I began scanning. Over and over, even though nothing was there, even though no end came, even though I forgot my name. And one day I saw someone new. He was confused. looking around, holding his scanner too tightly. He looked exactly like me before all of this. I tried to warn him, tried to speak, but the rules didn't let me. So I watched as he scanned item 300, and I waited, just like the others had waited for me. Because that's how it works here. In the warehouse, behind the warehouse, behind the warehouse. We're all just workers now, working forever, following the rules, or becoming the next one who breaks them. The end.